I think we're live. I think we're live, folks. We are live. I thought it would be prudent or interesting or something for the new year to have a live podcast. Surprise, surprise. Welcome to the live chat. So, we're probably not going to get a lot of people on. If you do come on and you want to chat and you see this and you've got nothing left to do and you've watched all the television movies and television programs, welcome to join me live. I'm out of the forest. I am out of the forest for today, for the live stream. I think it's an interesting idea. We're at the top of the year, 2026. 2026, January, it's the time of the year where you make your New Year's resolutions, you set your goals. And one of our goals here at the podcast is to revamp. I'm hoping to revamp the theme. I'm working on a new theme, some new visuals. Tell me if you still like the forest and the woods. Normally, normally in the winter, I would do a podcast in the woods, and it's freezing cold. It's minus. It's been up to minus 20 degrees Celsius. It's much warmer this year, but you can only do. Usually, when it was minus 20, the phone battery would freeze after about 18 minutes, just before my hands would freeze. So it's good because my hands would be most of the time my hands were frozen. And when I finished the podcast, when the battery dies, my fingers were frozen. I'd have to get it going. Hey, we do have some people on. Hey, hi. B. Millis, the Halloween freaks. We have never done a live stream. I've never even considered doing a live stream because I've always set it up a certain way, and I started way before any of the new technologies came around. Hopefully you guys can all hear me. And I have to read sideways here, but if you have any questions, Happy New Year. Greetings from Spain, yes. Hola. Yo no hablo español, but hola. Yeah. Halloween, that's a Halloween tag. We must love Halloween. We're in January 2026. I started celebrating the Chinese New Year many years ago, 20, 30 years ago. So I stopped doing my Western resolutions. This Chinese New Year was usually in February or late January, and they had their own kind of celebration. And then I learned you can do resolutions any month, any week you want. And so make your resolutions. Feel free to change your resolutions. And boy, it's warm in here. I'm used to freezing and bugs and mosquitoes biting me. At some podcasts, I'd have welts. All over my body because I forgot to spray with the DDT, which is a poison. DDT is a poison. And here you go. Have been watching you for 14 years. Wow. From Russia. Dobro. I don't speak Russian. Welcome everyone. I have been, we don't have a large group, and I'm perfectly okay with it. And the sort of our group here has grown slowly year after year, and we've got a pretty good group. Because what I talk about, most others don't. Most other teachers don't, and the the my insights come from a lot of my own personal work, my own research is quite different. You know, we talked about synthetic humans. That no one has ever done that before. That was a breakthrough. That didn't really reach because it's a very sensitive subject and involves some high profile people. That didn't reach a huge audience, but a lot of people, when I went down to different cities, people would acknowledge that's the guy who did the synthetic humans. So, and then there was I showed it on my Facebook post, but there was an ad. Um, there was an ad for a new, the Android, so the phone, and one of the telecom companies was offering the the Android, and it was after I had done this Androids Among Us. Remember the Androids Among Us, which one of the biggest um, videos or podcasts I've had. And it was soon after that there was an ad in the newspaper, and it says, because there are androids among us, right? So, I don't get big recognition, but I get a little recognition. I get people approach me and say little things, and I'm okay with that. I don't want to be famous. I didn't start this to be famous. I started this to share and open some doors and introduce things that I have been researching. And I've also researched subjects in a way that others have not. So while a lot of research focus on previous historical material or historical teachings or ancient teachings, I tried to create a whole new spectrum of teaching, and which is a very hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do, to introduce and to compete with. There's so much information, but I think we've done pretty good. After I started in 2000, I woke up in 2005, and 2006 I got my bearings, and I was doing this complex mission thing, which I've never really discussed that much. That failed badly, and that was 2006. 2007, I started the YouTube, which nobody was on YouTube. No one talking about UFOs or alternative subject was on YouTube, and I looked on YouTube. There was nobody doing it. It was all back then. You had a 10-minute time limit, and if you're teaching something, you can't teach something in 10 minutes. So they go on radio, or they do a lot of the stuff in the UFO stuff. They would do conference. It would be like a little conference, and they'd make a video, and they put it on DVDs, and then they'd hand out DVDs, and they'd circulate DVDs to share the knowledge. Right, that was the old time. So I was on YouTube talking about, because I didn't want to talk about all silly stuff and doing silly stunts and filming, beavers jump trees or something. So I started talking about serious stuff. And when I came out on YouTube talking about like ET stuff, it was the hardest thing. I mean, I struggled with it. And I made some silly video, and it got like 10 views. And I said, okay, well I was expecting 1, I got 10. So I tried to keep making more. And those are the early days. The early days were very, back then we're talking 2007. And then I was attacked. And then about 2008 I was attacked by the trolls, by the counterintelligence. They just hammered me and hammered and hammered. And I had to retreat. I mean, I had no support. I had to retreat. I was still struggling to find, to earn an income because when you're researching, maybe people don't know, but when you're researching exotic topics like this, it's hard to maintain a domestic life. It's hard to have a job. It's hard to hold a job because you're getting inspiration. You're having dreams. You're up all night, so you don't make it to work on time. You can't hold an important job. You have to have a minimum wage job. So you got very little money, and you're working minimum wage, and it's hard work. But then if you work too much, it takes away from your energy, so you really can't do anything. Let me see if I can read it. And you're in where you share ideas. I was wondering if I could join. Yeah, join a small group. You can join this group. You can join the live chat. Happy New Year from KC, Kansas City. KC and the Sunshine Band. Here you go, Halloween Freaks. I'm actually from Japan. No, I'm not. Okay, it's not from Japan. I was going to say something in Japanese. Funny videos with blue hair. Oh, yeah. So when I started, I did a music video based on the Twisted Sister song, We're Not Gonna Take It. If it might still be online. We're not gonna take it. It says you have to disclose it. You gotta disclose it. You gotta disclose it. You gotta disclose it now. Ba 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 bam. You gotta disclose it. So, in the early days, I came up with every imaginative way to communicate, to reach out. And I did a bunch of songs, they're parody songs, based on, some music. Some of them songs were terrible, because I wasn't a singer per se. That one, I thought it was pretty good. It was pretty funny. I didn't need to be a good singer, and we did a video on that. So I'm trying to fit into the YouTube culture, because anything goes, right? You could do stupid things. So here's some stupid thing, guy with blue hair, and he's singing about disclosure, right? And he's singing the song. Meanwhile, it's a very serious subject as well. But I've always been the kind of person to let's broaden the scope. It's a very serious thing, but we can still have a comedy. We can broaden it a little bit without offending it. So I'm kind of I have a broader range than a lot of the other teachers who come from a very strict and serious point of view, and they kind of have doctorate degrees, and they're very well established. I have a looser, because I'm also a writer, I'm an artist. I come from that background. I write stories, I tell stories, I write scripts, I write books, so I have a more broader spectrum than the usual. And maybe that takes away from my, credibility. But, just because you're serious and you're a doctorate degree doesn't mean you're credible. Doesn't mean it's a lot of these people, a lot of the UFO experts have never even seen a UFO. So how can you call yourself an expert? You've never seen a UFO. You've never seen an alien. Oh, I got sources. You're a UFO expert. They go out there, I'm a UFO expert. I've been researching this for 20 years, but I've never seen anything. I have seen ships. I have seen extraterrestrials. I don't call myself a UFO expert. And nobody considers me a UFO expert. So that's always the interesting thing. I don't believe the expert. I'm an expert, yeah. I read a few books, And I talked to this guy in the military, and I'm all of a sudden I'm an expert. A lot of those guys today, a lot of those experts today are work for counterintelligence, and they're undercover CIA and what have you, NSA. There's no background checks. If anybody on television talk about UFOs, national television, they are not. These are working for the government. They're working for the government. Okay, that's what they know. What they know is what they're told to know, and that's my opinion. Of course, it's all my opinion. They work for the people who see and meet aliens are not going to get on television, and if they do, they will be attacked and called crazy, and they don't have a doctorate degree. The aliens don't choose the aliens don't choose doctors to visit. Oh, what we're gonna do? We're gonna go land our ships and go only visit the doctors. You got a PhD? Do you got a PhD? Because we're coming to your house. I don't have a PhD. Okay, we're not. Don't visit that guy. He doesn't have a PhD. Don't visit her. She doesn't have a PhD. She only got a master's degree. We are not visiting that house. These Stellans are not like that, because but that's for some reason that's the way they interpret it. In the movie they'll come down and visit, the Einsteins. Oh, he's a professor at the university. We'll visit him. Yes, he will understand how advanced our technology really is and our science. But it's just not. It's not the case. It happens, but it's not the norm. It'll be in a movie. We approach the scientists, right? He's working on a new formula. We approached him. Yes, yes. You will understand. Our nature is very advanced. We're very advanced. But it's just not true. It's just it's a cinematic element. Okay, it's fiction. The ETs, they will approach those who are able to understand because they have some either genetic connection or some heritage, interstellar heritage. You understand? So you could have a basic job and a family, and if you have a genetic heritage, if you're a star kid, star child, then they will visit the star child. It's nothing to do with if you have a PhD. You don't need a PhD. Why does if I have a PhD in nutrition, how does that make me an expert in UFOs? And people believe all this stuff. Well, I got a PhD in engineering. I'm a UFO expert. It's got nothing to do. Oh, the ship is very advanced. Well, any idiot can see it's advanced. All of a sudden you understand intergalactic travel. I'm an astrophysicist. Aliens are not real. But you don't know anything. You know nothing. You are an idiot. Okay? Other than astrophysics. So stick to your constellations and your galaxies and let somebody else talk about the ships and the advanced cultures. Sorry, I don't mean to I get excited about this because, I get attacked. I get attacked by counterintelligence. And then they prop up these PhDs to say, well, do aliens exist? Tell us, Professor. Well, you see, let me think. Given the projections and given all of the statistics and the fact that the exoplanets are more numerous than we estimated, given the fact that the sun is very hot and there's gravity, and given that the moon circles around our planet, I would say that there probably, maybe, likely, could be, very, very likely, but not entirely plausible, although with respect, highly probable, that there do exist other types of races, although not necessarily human, in some part of the galaxy, though not necessarily the Milky Way. They're going to get me on TV now. I sound like that's what they talk about. It's complete gibberish, It's a word, what do you call it? Word salad. It's a work, and it works. The I'm saying it works because they're on national television, and the millions and tens of millions of people are believing this garbage. It's utter garbage. You know what they should get on TV is the people who have seen ships, people who have been on ships, people who say they've been abducted, who don't work for the government, and people who have seen, have met ETs in some fashion, or little grays. Many people have seen little grays. Get them on television, right? Yeah, there's lots of people talking about that. If you go to conferences, that people, experiencers, do talk about it. Instead of the PhD professors, astrophysicists who don't know anything about anything other than the constellations, which is nice, but we're not talking about constellations. Okay, let me read some here if I can read. Can you tell about your experience visiting mothership with a lot of star civilizations? Please, the ones you met, how they looked human-like, lion-like, like bird-like. I have been on ships. There are different races I have seen. Of course, I've seen the little grays. There's also the tall, what they call the tall grays. I don't remember. I had a name for them, but they're taller. So they're human. They're human-like, but they're gray. They have a gray skin, almost like a seal skin, and they have almond eyes that are blackish, if I recall, like one color. And I think some of them have hair. They're humanoid, tall grays. There are they're blonde type of stellan race, like a fair skin, blonde. There's a whitish skin, not always blonde, but white, like a whitish skin race. I think those are the ones. I think those are the elves in the inner Earth, which they may think of as ETs, but I think they're inner Earth. There's always this question of whether they come from other planets or interdimensional, or from inside the Earth. And people are trying to say, well, there's only one thing. I'm just reading some comments. Social engineering. You mean genetic engineering? B. Mills. Genetic engineering or social engineering? I'm going to sleep. I will keep it on. Good night. Where was I? Other type of races. I have seen the mantid race, which is like it looks, I guess the best way to describe it is a praying mantis. It's almost like a praying mantis, but they're about 9 feet tall. They're very tall, very thin, and they have a head. They have a head of a praying mantis, and they speak. They're telepathic. Praying mantis, they tend to be more medical. They pour like what do you call them? Physicians. They're more like physicians. They're like they're very good at medicine or surgery, right? Healing. They're very good. They have a very deep understanding of that in genetics, human genetics. So they're very intelligent. There are what other race? There's the felines that I've seen. I don't remember lion, but they're like feline. They're very feline, or very not. I've not seen a lot of them, but they're very. What do you call it? They're very close knit. The felines. Very generous, close, but they don't necessarily trust everybody. They're very careful who they work with or trust. They're wonderful. It's a wonderful race. These are wonderful. I mean, to me, it's a different culture. You know, are they interdimensional? Well, the thing is, The thing is, if I'm a Stellan, let's say I'm a Stellan in a ship, and the ship is next to Venus, and I want to communicate with somebody on the Earth. So there's a distance there. We'll get there. Let me ask the astrophysicist. What's the distance between Venus and the Earth? Okay, that's when we need an astrophysicist. Okay, we don't need an astrophysicist to talk about Stellan culture because they don't know anything about it. So there's let's say a Stellan and Venus in a ship, and they want to communicate to someone on the Earth. Well, instead of traveling there physically, which takes time, and effort and energy, and then you might get attacked because they'll attack your ship when you enter the atmosphere, right? The Earth's forces will attack your ship. Those might shoot you down, or you might have defenses. So why go through all of that when you can project yourself, and appear and communicate to somebody in a projected form, a kind of like not necessarily, but maybe we understand it's holographic. Maybe it's a holographic. So they would, in that instance, they would appear as a holographic star beam because they're not physically at the location. Again, for the particular reason, and maybe they can. If I can communicate with 100 people a day using projection, astral projection, or holographic projection, versus flying, I can only fly to 10 people a day. Well, I can visit more people on a daily basis, and it doesn't take me as much time and energy. I can do everything in an hour or a couple of hours, and I got the rest of the time to myself to recuperate. So the question is, are they interdimensional? Well, if they're communicating through that medium, yes. Are there certain races that are interdimensional? Well, there are certain races that could exist on a different plane of existence. So this is our plane, the physical reality. So another race might exist in the gamma dimension. So then for them to communicate, they'll have to cross dimension. So it's a trans-dimensional communication. They might appear as interdimensional, but they physically exist on the gamma spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum. They physically exist at a higher frequency. And rather than descend into the earth, which is a very low frequency and is quite painful, they just project, communicate. There's different methods. I mean, we don't talk about it. Science hasn't proven everything, so you can't talk about everything, but there are various ways to reach out, to project, astral projection. There's technology, you got holographic projection, you got telepathy, right? You got some races have a very powerful telepathic projection where they can project themselves, so they don't even need technology. And then as you go around the spectrum, there's more and more advanced races. They can do incredible things that we can't explain. They can appear here, and they can appear. I've had races appear beside me, but you can't. They're not in the visible spectrum. So they're outside the visible, but they're right here. The real. You can feel. I can feel the person right there. There was the Corey Good did the work on the blue avians. I don't follow as much as everything anymore because it's a little bit. It's either repetitive or jumbled. And I've been talking about a lot of the other stuff, incarnation and stuff. But the blue avians, when they were here, and the spheres, yeah, they were doing a lot of work on the Earth. And the blue avians, they're very advanced. They're extremely, extremely advanced, you know. And so you should look at Corey Good's work on all of that. So he's real. I think he's real. He's contact. He doesn't. I don't think he has a PhD. And maybe somebody should tell him get a PhD in astrophysics just to be credible. You know, it's real. But that's the There's one. That's one race of many, of many. So get your PhD. Implant in my bone. I have a device implant in my bone ankle that is visible on X-ray. Yeah, so there's another thing. Implants. Okay, let's talk about implants. So this is a live stream. If you're joining, welcome. We're trying something new. The Sacred Shaman. That's the one. I didn't even introduce my podcast. Sacred Shaman. Welcome to the Sacred Shaman podcast. I am Paris Tosin. I am your host. This is a live stream in January 2026. We're talking about stellans and star beings. There's an implant in my bone ankle. So there have been implants. Implants are for various reasons. In the past, they were little devices. People found little devices. And they are, well, they're different races that can be tracking you. They can be improving your genetics. They can be a lot of the time in the past there was and some people don't agree with this, and that's fine. You're entitled to not agree with whatever you want. There was a genetic engineering program. As much as people don't agree that this is what exactly happened, to my knowledge, the human race was upgraded, and it's been upgraded over the centuries. But in the last 30 years, there's been a very strong upgrading program. So you see this in the new generations, right? The millennials and the Z generation, they are different. The kids are different. They're functioning differently. They're acting differently. And you talk about the star children, then there's the crystal children, and all of those terms. To me, it's just star children. We have been upgraded as a race. Again, not everybody agrees with it, so I just mentioned that. But my understanding and my experience and my observation of the new generation of kids is they're definitively different and more advanced genetically than us. They have better health, they have better look, a lot of them have almond eyes, they have larger heads. So they're, used to give birth by normal vaginal birth, but because the heads of some kids have grown so big, it's all cesarean. Because the head has grown of the child, right? So, and then if you compare parents of a previous generation, and then the kid, the parents are 5'2" and the kid is 6'4". Something happened in that, or the parents are they're moderately they're not exactly models, and then the child is like gorgeous or handsome, perfect body, perfect shapes, so how did these let's say two parents who are not that pretty or handsome produce a child who is extremely with a big head and very handsome, muscular? So people will say, well, it's diet. Well, you're not going to grow a foot and a half from eating mac and cheese and McDonald's and fast food, right? Even if they eat fast food and most food is processed, is ultra processed foods. Even eating ultra processed foods, these children are still incredibly tall, thin, good looking, smart. very capable. Some of them are more advanced, some are nonverbal, some are nonverbal, some are have social issues, right? A lot of the time they have a gender or sexual confusion, but they might have a stellar heritage. Again, because all of this is blocked, you can't access the stellar component, so you start to focus on gender or gender identity. But it's not always necessarily that. It could be genetics, and genetics are it could be you could have genetics that are more advanced, but you're not able to connect to your genetic heritage, your star heritage, or to understand it, because some things are blocked genetically, spiritually blocked. Maybe it's fear. Sometimes it's fear, lack of knowledge. But there's a heavy campaign for the gender identity, which is okay, but there's no campaign for the stellar identity. Do you have an interstellar identity? There's nobody doing that, because that's all top secret, classified, national secret. So they can't talk about it. Even they know about it, they cannot. No one can talk about national secrets if you know about it, unless you're like me, because then they can take away my credibility. They can show naked videos of me to hurt my reputation, and so people stop listening. But the fact is, I know what I'm talking about, and this is true, and it doesn't matter the other stuff, okay? It's not going to bother me that much. So there are implants, but most of the work I use my finger. Most of the work on implants from my work was with the dissolvable implants, where they can implant something into your body. In my case, they would implant in my cheek. If you see my cheek has a little, see that little. That's a scar from an implant. And they put it's a dissolvable implant. It's almost like a silicon-based implant that they put in, and that has a certain effect. Implants are programmed. They're programmed with information. So the implant will, if you got a certain implant, they might have them in your neck. You might have them in your hand, sometimes in your hand or your arm. I don't know exactly why the location, maybe different types of programming. So there would be different programs. So let's say you came to Earth, because everybody comes to Earth for a certain reason. If you have a star heritage, then you're in contact with your star family, whatever that family is, and then they'll implant you, because it's all in agreement. You are on a spiritual level, you are in agreement to do certain things. Your mission, it's called, if you call it your mission. And then they'd implant that mission so that you act out that thing. You pursue a certain career, right? You pursue, so you go to a certain school, you write a certain book, and then you do something to make sure you do that, because there's a lot of distraction, there's a lot of reasons not to do it, and some of it's very hard. So it's part of your understanding and agreement. I don't believe in disagreement. I believe there's an agreement at a higher level, which you agree to do, and the implants help sometimes they help stabilize you, because you're going to have a lot of challenges. You might have mental problems, you might be attacked, and you got emotional problems. So the implants are there, and sometimes the implants don't work, so the people go off, or they fight it, right? They fight it and they resist it. So then they go off, or they might go on drugs, or they might, do something stupid. But most people, they stay on and focus, and those people you don't hear about, but they have good, successful lives. And they may not even know they have a star heritage. You don't always have to know. I don't believe you have to know. I used to think I had an obligation to share my knowledge, which was a huge detriment to my life because as soon as I started talking, mention the word alien, then my career is over. So, so, but not everybody has to do that. And today, because there's so much information today, if I had started today, I wouldn't have to use all of those terms to be able to talk about it, right? Because we can talk around it now. We got different terms to talk about. But again, 20 years ago, it was a very different field, and it was very dark, very dangerous. Very dangerous. 20 years ago, you would get killed. You would get killed by talking about it. By meeting a star being, because they can track you, you would get killed. You would get damaged, or your life would be turned upside down, or bad things would happen to you. And a lot of people lost their lives. A lot of people are in mental institutions. I'll tell you a story. I was living in Kamloops, and I didn't have a job. So I said I need a job. I didn't have any money, and I'm going to apply for a job. I said I don't care at this point now, because I've been doing whatever just to pay my bills. I have no career per se, other than writing. I found a job at the mental institution. There's a mental institution as a janitor. There's a janitorial job at the mental institution. Okay, and I applied. And I'm thinking. I remember walking down the street. I'm thinking, this would be good because a lot of the people in the mental institution probably have star heritage, and I might be able to help some people, right? Although, I mean, some people are very sick. There'll be some who are kind of struggling with their awakening, struggling with their mission. Because you got a mission. I got a mission. I got a mission. No, you got to calm down. You can't just yell and scream. I got a mission. So because when you wake up, you start screaming and yelling. You know, me, when I've woken up many times, and there's always a lot of screaming and yelling, and you're saying all kind of crazy things, right? These guys are evil. That's under control. But that's the waking up process. People don't understand it. It's the waking up. And in anything you do in life, even if you're in politics, the waking up process, before you become a political activist, you're yelling and screaming, and you're angry. And I've seen it on TV. A guy goes on Phil Donahue, which was an old talk show, very famous, Phil Donahue. And everybody would want to go there. And this guy came on, and he was like yelling and screaming, this is wrong, this is wrong, this guy, this politicians is bad, this is evil, they're corrupt. And Phil Donahue took these people on, and he was able to have a discussion with them. And then, 10 years later, they'd bring the same guest on, and he'd be like, yes, you see, the policy here was quite offensive, and it violated all of these laws. And he was so calm, so intelligent. It's the same person. And you see this in other aspects of life, and especially in this interstellar thing, that when you wake up and you realize what's really going on, you get really angry. And if you don't, you didn't really see anything. You get angry, you get charged, you get emotional. You have to do something, right? You feel I gotta change. I want to change the world, which is normal. I say it's normal, but when you view that person at that time, they look like a nut, and they put them on medication, which so they wake up, you put them on medication, and they go back to sleep. So they've just sabotaged the guy. He's going to be on medication for the rest of his life. It might take him 10 years to wake up again. So the system, right? The guy's talking crazy, put him on medication. Same with interstellar. So you might have these implants. These implants, they wake you up when you're 21, and you're like, I've got to change the world, and you don't know what's happening. You know nothing about implants, and you start talking crazy, and they take you to a psychiatrist and put you on medication because the rest of society is asleep, and you're yelling and screaming. No, so what happens is once you wake up, the idea is you're supposed there should be programs where people develop your knowledge, do your research, get your facts, sort of educate yourself, modulate yourself, and become a professional, right? But it takes years. It takes, could take 7 to 10 years before you're fully educated. You know everything is wrong, but now you got to get the facts and the knowledge and the background to support those truths or to refute those truths. It's a very difficult process, but it takes time, and we don't allow this awakening process to happen, or we shut it down. And once you're on medication, the medication now clouds your views, but then it also prevents you from going out. What was that? Implants. We're talking about implants. So the implant, sometimes when someone awakens, is an implant, could be behind it. Now the implant, I say they're disposable because over a period of years they will dissolve. And if they don't dissolve properly, it might develop an infection or a cyst. And in my case, I had these cysts in my cheek, and I dug them out, and there was material in my cheek. The remaining implant was actually, they're like these tendrils. And they didn't fully dissolve. So, again, I talk about it from my own experience. And there's other parts. I've had other. I would find something in my other part of the body, and then a week later it would be gone. Some people would find moles if they have a visit. I had a number of near-death experiences. And one was like a death, and then the next morning I woke up, and I found like three new moles, because there's some intervention, so sometimes you'll have an intervention, which I've had interventions because of near death. And so I'd have moles. I got moles everywhere now. So there's now, just because you have moles doesn't mean you were visited. Okay, but sometimes I had one time I woke up in the morning. I had 3 red dots on my where was it? I think it was on my abdomen. I had three, and I also had it on my arm once. I had on my arm. I had 3 laser dots, perfect formation, same dot, same shape, and 3 dots, and that was an intervention. And then the dots, they're like red. They're red. They're like a bright red dots. In the morning, I would wake up to these dots, and I'd have some dream of some interstellar contact, and then within a few hours the dots would change into moles, right? And then sometimes those moles would move. I don't know if people have seen that before. Sometimes the moles, the 3 dots became moles, and then the moles would move to other parts of the arm. So you can, the thing with me is you can explain, you can deny as much as you want. And I denied as many things as I could. But at some point you can't deny it anymore, right? You can't, certain things, you know, if your marriage is failing and your husband's a douchebag, at some point the marriage is over. And that's, so, you know, but you can deny it. You can deny the, you know, denial is a river in Egypt. So in my case, yeah, I have, you know, I've had to understand things from a personal level. Yes, I had the dream of a star being. I woke up with these three red dots on my arm. I had a near death experience. Something happened, let's say, and I should have died, but then I had these dots and I didn't die, and they became moles, and then the moles keep moving. So that's not normal. Maybe if people would see a doctor. What do you go to the doctor for? My moles are moving. what's the, what's the illness? What's the illness, doctor? My moles keep moving around. Your moles are moving? Really? Here's some medication. Okay. I had this one time, and early on, one of the ways that I learned was to interact with other experiencers. My early work, I would work with other experiencers. So I got contacted by this woman who had a child. I don't remember if it was a male or female, but it had a child, like a 5-year-old. And the 5-year-old, a lot of kids can see the star people. The 5-year-old said, "There's this blue man. He comes at nighttime and he's trying to abduct him or doing things to him, and the child is scared." And so the mother, he's telling the child, the 5-year-old, is telling the mother, this blue man. The children are a lot of families, they don't talk about it, but their children can see star beings. And the children tell the parents. The parents don't tell anybody else, okay? But sometimes they told me. But most of the time they won't say anything else, right? They keep it secret. But I know, so I like to work with children because children can see these star people and they're open to it, whereas adults are not open to it. So the working with younger people is, in the past, it was easier for me because they understand where I'm coming from, and when I say something, they can relate to it. The adults, they either don't relate, or they're very judgmental or offended, or start thinking there's something wrong with you. So there's this woman, the child said, there's this blue man, he's coming to abduct me. The problem, so I looked into it, and the blue man, this blue being, is a short, so he was a short blue star being. He was a healer, and he was coming to heal the child because it was a star child, and he's having difficulty because the child keeps fighting him. So I explained to them that blue being is a healer, and he's just trying to heal you, whatever your illness is. Sometimes, you know, children, they have an illness and then the illness is gone. So this star being, which don't exist, this blue man, let him do what he's going to do. He's a healer. He's not going to hurt you. And so the child understood and calmed down, and then the blue-skinned physician healed him and then moved on. So it didn't have to come back. Or, you know, finished a few days later, it's healed. So I did a lot of work like that, which was kind of bridging, helping people understand. And I have no idea I don't remember who these people, there's so many, there's hundreds of these. And that was part of my training as well, because I had my own doubts, right? But then when I'm hearing children say this mantid, this little gray, right? This blue man, then what happens is it removes all that doubt. Well, if other people are seeing the same thing and I don't know them, and none of that comes from the movies, then this could be real. So that's part of my training growing up. After I awoke, because you're full of doubt. There's nobody says I believe. I believe. Okay, I had a bunch of I had a bunch of topics I was going to talk about, but we're talking all about uh, star people. So there's a huge amount of genetic engineering. I believe my understanding is that 97, 98% of the world has been genetically upgraded. Unless you're hiding in a cave somewhere, you've been genetically upgraded to some degree. Some people have been more upgraded, some people have more star genetics. It's not equal. Um, but everybody has been upgraded. So we're seeing, and that's why I believe. But you look at the introduction of social media, right? Which is multimedia, multiple media, streaming movies, streaming music. The media is getting faster and faster. Now you got AI information is getting faster and faster. In the fact that the children, the millennials, the young children can absorb it, can process it, can move into it, can accept it. It's part of their genetics. I'm not a geneticist. I don't have a PhD. I fundamentally believe it's part of their advanced genetics, which have a lot of more star genetics, star genes. But at the same time, you're having kids have a less social interaction, right? They prefer online, they prefer text, right? Versus social. So your generation, my generation is more social. I want to meet you, I want to see you, I want to touch you. Not there. I want to shake your hand to believe it is real. But today's generation, it's all phone. So they don't have any social skills. Kids today don't have any real social skills, not compared to before. So that's also this. Maybe that is a not a not a consequence, but maybe a side effect that social interaction is different. When you have these advanced genetics, you can process information, you understand things at a much faster level. Some kids have telepathic ability, some kids have healing ability, but they have social ability is much less, and maybe that's because maybe at some point we will be more telepathic without technology, right? Just with our own presence. You can pick up presence. You understand. You can understand without saying something. The kids today can pick up what I'm feeling, so I don't have to say it. But from my experience, from my childhood, I have to say it, and I want you to say it. Otherwise, there's something I feel something's missing. But that's my generation. My generation, or if it's my personality. My personality is just wait. I gotta talk. We talk. Share. And when I grew up, I was a man of few words. I spoke very few words, and I understood. I felt, but then something happened, and I started speaking a lot. And some people don't like that. I speak a lot. Talking is good. Okay. I wish they visited me physically. So a lot of time, the today especially, the star person will not visit you physically in person. In some cases, they will. Yes. In some circumstances, in certain groups, they might have a certain group visit that happens. But those are usually they're kind of private. So they're not going to talk about it. If there's a group, if there's 10 people meeting a star, they're not going to publicize it. It's a private thing. So, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So they might not meet you physically, so they'll work with you at a spiritual dimension, astral dimension. They'll communicate. Sometimes, a lot of time, a star being will not present themselves as a humanoid. They might present themselves as a bird or a deer, right? Or a horse. Like, say you like horses and you dream of a horse came up to you and you rode it and it was great. That could be a communication by a star being manifesting as a horse or a deer or a moose, right? Sometimes I think of something. One time I was in Cologne, I was thinking about star beings on the earth, and I was having this moment, and then these, I was thinking this would be nice contact, and then these several deer showed up. So that's, sometimes you can call that a coincidence, but I've had it happen so many times that's another way, right? They present themselves, and sometimes I've seen, a deer would appear, and then I would look back, and the deer is gone. So, right? So it's like, I don't think it's that fast. So a lot of the contact would be using animals or birds as a symbol that they're watching, or they heard you. They heard you, they're with you, they're watching you, but they're not going to physically appear, because that could destabilize you. That would destabilize the situation. I saw an alien. I did. But in a dream form, in a animal manifestation, you're like, yeah, I saw a moose. Your friends will say, okay, so what? But to you, it might have significance, right? That you may share, you may not share. You may be thinking about your star family, and then the moose appears. So it has that personal connection to you. But then you might tell your friends, I saw a moose today. You might not say, I was thinking about star people, or my angels, or whatever you want to call them. So a lot of the what I'm saying, a lot of the interaction is not oblique. It's not in your face. A ship's not going to land and say, I'm here. So they work in more mysterious ways. And it's personal. A lot of time it's personal, right? Because it's to you. If you like horses, you see horses. If you like owls, every time you're dealing with something and you're thinking about them, the owl appears. Or you're reading a book, there's an owl. You're online, and there's an ad with an owl. So some people say, I always see an owl. My whole life I've seen owls. Well, that's a connection to your own heritage. It has to do with owls. Maybe it's an owl race. Maybe it's a particular race, a bird race, right? There's too many to really explain it all. I'm going to read a few more of these. Implants have different purposes. So the implant, not all of them, implants have different purposes. Not all of them are negative. So again, we go back to the discussion we've had with my labs, military labs. These are militarized labs that have back engineered some of the ET technology. They have back engineered ships. And they've also studied the ET phenomenon, and they've spoken to some of these ET groups, so they've learned what they're doing. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Right? So they've spoken to them, and those captured ETs have told them stuff, and so sometimes they were tortured. They were tortured and said, okay, what are these little things? Well, those are implants. So the MyLabs would start doing abductions, which were fake abductions to kind of harm the reputation of these ETs. And then they would abduct these people and they would probe them with metal probes in their butt. So those are not ETs, those are sociopaths wearing ET masks. And they would drug you. They would drug somebody and they would physically rape them. And then they would brainwash them while on drugs in a state of suggestion. We are ETs. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And in some cases, I am aware of some cases, they would say, you're no good and you should be a prostitute. And those people would become prostitutes, or drug addicts, or criminals, or they would destroy lives. Okay. These are I don't know all the things they did, but they would destroy lives, and they would torture you. So those are my labs. Now my labs also put implants. They put implants, the metal implants. Those were to track you or whatever, but that had a malevolent purpose. That was humans acting as aliens, adopting some, back engineering or imitating some of the things that the actual ETs would do. Right? They would experiment. They would do maybe medical procedures on you, but those are not ETs, And sometimes they would say, okay, this is, the guy would go on television and I was abducted and they did medical experiments on me and they did something to me and they put something in me. I was in a ship, and that's all fake. It's my lab. It's all human. It's all human. But you got a back-engineered ship. You might have particular lasers. You might have a metal implant that nobody else has. So it does look alien. And then they were wearing masks with the big eyes with gray skin, and they looked like aliens in your drugged state. You were gassed with knockout, and you were drugged. It could appear as an abduction, but it's not necessarily an abduction. It could be a MyLab extraction, and you were tortured and raped. And they experimented on you for their own purpose. Some of it's pretty terrible, and again, I can't prove it. I have no evidence. My opinion. I gotta stay out of trouble. My opinion. There are my labs. You look them up. My labs, military labs. Implant. Okay, here we go. Paris, nice to see you again. Hello. Okay. So this, as we wrap up, I always say as we wrap up, and I go another half an hour. Let's try to keep that in check. I just thought I'd do a live stream. I wanted to try it out, see if it works, and see how people respond to it. I had a bunch of topics I wanted to talk about, but I seem to only talk about interstellar stuff, so maybe that was what's on my mind, or maybe that's what's on your mind. Again, I don't think it's an obligation. I think it's important. It's important, again, for me, it's important that we are aware of things, right? That we're not just listening to the central programming, that we're aware of a much broader spectrum of reality, that there are far more things going on than we are told or taught. And whether you understand it all or not, be aware of it, right? You be aware of implant. You're not going to be an expert in implants. In my case, I've had extreme experiences, and part of that probably is the impetus to share because they're so extreme. And if I internalize it, that would cause me great physical and mental problems because that's just, it's too much to hold inside. All this stuff is happening to me. At some point, I would probably go have a mental breakdown. The other thing is, there's so much going on that my process was if I share it as I go along, then I will understand it better myself. Because as I'm sharing it, I'm learning and understanding it, and then the next podcast, I'm getting into more depth, and I'm doing research, and so I'm learning to process this information. At the same time, I'm sharing it, and you are getting the benefit of that process. So it's not a crystallized conclusion. It's like, okay, there's this happened. Well, wait a minute, this means that, and then wait a minute, I think this means that, and then we kind of grow. Anyway, that was my process, and then that morphed into the other subject. There's more spiritual stuff, which I'm getting into. I'll be talking more about this year. Hopefully, we'll get more into the incarnation stuff this year. So I want to focus more on that. And I'm going to revamp the theme and a new look. I don't have all the time in the world, so as the time allows, I will do things and we'll put out podcasts. I've also been developing, I should let you know, I've been developing another podcast, not the other one we've been dealing with the silly stuff, but another one, Tosin Time. We call it Tosin Time, which is a comedy show. So again, talking about all this stuff is very heavy. It's been very heavy in the past. Spiritual stuff is very heavy, and so maybe people think I have a certain persona. It's just, I'm naturally a very serious person. I have been always a very serious person, but in recent years, I've learned to. I've been developing my sense of humor, and even when I started, I think when I started 20 years ago, I was going. If people remember, I was kind of doing some comedy. Remember the Cosmic Club? Any of you remember that? If you've been watching for a while, I was doing some comedy, and then I was doing this serious discussion. And at some point, I couldn't do them both. I liked the comedy, but I had to, again, I had to do this other stuff. I couldn't do them both. So the comedy kind of shrank, and it became very serious. I think I've reached now a point where the serious stuff is, a lot of information's already out there, and now I want to keep up my comedy, which is more for my state of mind and health. A lot of it has to do with, it's good for my mental health. It's good to balance out my my persona, which I'm not always serious. You have your different persona. I like comedy, but comedy is very different because it's kind of silly and stupid. And I always felt in the past, if I do some comedy, then it might detract from my seriousness. But I'm at a point, maybe I don't care. Or maybe I've said so much that I'm allowing myself to do that. So hopefully we're going to do some more of that. It won't be as much, but it's a kind of a comedy stupidity. I'm letting out my humorous side. I do have a humor. I like comedy. I love comedy. I've always loved comedy. I've never allowed myself to do it, and I've never been really good at it, and it's very competitive. And if you do it wrong, then you get hammered. And I didn't have the social skills. I don't think I had the social skills when I was young to really deal with all the rejection. And being a writer was like massive rejection. But then the writer, you can internalize it. You don't have to. Not everybody knows. You send it to one place, only they know, and your picture's not on there. So nobody. Comedy, if you do comedy, you can't just write it. You have to film it. You have to be on a stage, right? And then everybody can see, and then they can really go after you. It's pretty harsh, right? I think anyway. I think I'm reaching a point in my life where who cares? You know, I think it's very entertaining. I think some of it's pretty entertaining. So I'd like to do that. Hello, India. Wow. Hello, Sat Sri Akal. And okay. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon. Let's see how we shut this off here.